right after our divorce hearing. My mother-in-law blocked the courthouse door and jabbed a finger at my chest. "Don't ever set foot in my house again." Linda snapped. "Get out." Ethan stood behind her, his pregnant assistant hooked around his arm, wearing the grin of a man who thought he'd buried me for good. I looked at Linda, then at him, and smiled. "Actually," I said, "I sold the house this morning, and your son, I just fired him as CEO." Ethan's face went blank, but losing the house and the company wasn't the twist. The real shock was who had handed me the proof. For almost 7 years, Ethan and I looked like the couple people pointed to at backyard cookouts and said, "They've got it figured out." He was the founder of a growing tech company. I worked in investments, which was how I described it whenever anyone asked. Simple, vague, safe. Every morning, Ethan drank coffee from the same chipped navy mug I had bought him during our first Christmas together. I would straighten his tie before a pitch meeting, smooth the crease near his collar, and he would kiss my forehead. My steady one, he used to call me. Back then, I thought it meant I was his partner. Now I know it meant I was the person expected to hold everything up while he took the credit. The house had been mine long before Ethan came along. I bought it after years of brutal work, missed holidays, and dinners eaten over spreadsheets. I still remembered the first day I walked through the empty rooms. The place smelled like pine boards and fresh paint, and sunlight spilled across the hardwood like warm honey. I loved that house before I ever loved him. Before our wedding, Ethan signed an agreement confirming it was my separate property. His own lawyer explained every page. Ethan barely looked up. "Fine by me," he said. "Soon I'll buy us something twice this size." He never did. Instead, he paid a few household bills, handled the landscaping, and slowly started calling it his house. Linda picked up the habit fast. At Thanksgiving, she would sweep through my kitchen, move serving dishes without asking, and say, "Ethan has done so well for himself." I used to laugh it off. Correcting her felt petty. I told myself real power did not need a spotlight. That silence cost me more than I knew. Linda had always treated Ethan like the family's golden boy. Jessica backed him on everything because siding with Ethan usually came with a check. Marcus, Jessica's husband, got mocked for being careful with money and working in forensic auditing. Human calculator, Linda called him. Then there was Ashley, Ethan's 29-year-old executive assistant. She called after dinner, texted during weekends, laughed too hard at jokes that were not funny. Ethan said she was just dedicated. A week before my work trip, I found a jewelry bill on the counter. Ethan said it was a gift for an investor. The night before I left, Linda measured my office windows. "New curtains," she said. I believed both of them. Then my final meeting got canceled, and I came home 3 days early. That one decision changed everything. The rain hit the windshield so hard my driver slowed to a crawl before turning onto our street. At first, I thought the black shapes scattered along the driveway were trash bags waiting for pickup. Then I saw my red coat hanging out of one. My stomach dropped. I told the driver to stop and stepped into the cold. Water soaked through my shoes before I reached the first bag. Inside were sweaters, books, framed photos, and the blue ceramic bowl my mother gave me before she died. A second bag had split open near the curb. Papers clung to the pavement, payments, bills, notes from work. Ink bled into the rainwater. I picked up our wedding picture. Ethan's face had blurred into a gray streak. Mine was still clear. That should have warned me. The front door was unlocked the second I pushed it open. A sharp crack echoed through the foyer, then another. Someone was tearing down a wall. White dust floated through the hallway. My office door was gone. Half the room had already been stripped to the studs. Linda stood in the middle of it wearing a bright red jacket and pointing at 2 workers. "Take out the shelves too," she said. "I want this room warm, not depressing. What are you doing?" Every head turned. Linda did not look embarrassed. She looked annoyed. "You're early," she said. "Why are my things outside?" Before she answered, Ethan walked in from the kitchen. Ashley was beside him. She wore my cream robe. One hand rested on her stomach. There was no hiding the curve. For a second, the room went silent except for rain tapping the windows. Then I saw the necklace around her throat, the same necklace from the jewelry bill Ethan had called an investor gift. Ethan opened his mouth. "Candy." Let's not make this ugly. I stared at him. How far along is she? Ashley looked at the floor. 6 months, Ethan said. 6 months. I had spent those same months taking supplements, tracking appointments, and believing him when he said we should wait another year. Linda stepped between us. This family finally has a future, she said. A real heir. I looked at Ethan, waiting for him to stop her. He checked his watch. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Something inside me went quiet. Not broken. Quiet. Ethan pulled a folded check from his pocket and held it out. $5,000. That should cover a decent apartment while you get settled. He said the house was his. The company was his. The life we built was his. I did not argue. I picked up my work bag and walked back into the rain. My hands were shaking, but not from cold. For the first time, I understood that staying silent had never kept peace. It had protected him alone. Inside the car. My phone lit up. Marcus had sent one message. There are payments you need to see. That night. The apartment felt too quiet. The vent hummed above the kitchen. Rain tapped against the glass, somewhere below. A siren faded into the city. I set the wet wedding photo on the counter and watched water collect beneath the frame, for the first time since I left the house. I cried, not because I had lost Ethan, because I finally understood how long I had been losing myself. I pressed my palm against the cold marble counter and tried to breathe. Every room in that house held a version of me who had made excuses for him. I could almost hear her whispering that patience would fix everything. She was wrong. I called Daniel, my asset attorney, and gave him the short version. My husband moved his pregnant assistant into my house, I said. His mother threw my belongings outside. I need every ownership document checked tonight. Daniel did not ask if I was sure. He only said, I'll call you back. 40 minutes later, my phone rang. The house is yours, he said. Separate property, clear agreement. Ethan has no ownership interest. I closed my eyes. He kept saying it was his. Paying utility bills does not make someone the owner. That sentence should have made me feel powerful. Instead, it made me tired. I want to sell it, I said. Daniel paused. Because you need the money, no, because I'm never sleeping there again. The next morning, I met Marcus at a coffee shop downtown. He sat in the back corner with both hands wrapped around a paper cup he had not touched. His face looked gray under the fluorescent lights. I'm sorry, he said before I sat down. Show me. He slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were payments, bills, and account summaries. Nothing flashy, just numbers lined up in neat rows. But the numbers told a filthy story. Money had gone toward Ashley's jewelry, hotel stays, Linda's condo, and Jessica's studio. Nearly $1 million had been moved through expenses that did not match any real business purpose. Marcus pointed to one pending payment. $50,000, he said. He's trying to pull it from the employee reserve. I looked up. Payroll. He nodded. That was the moment the story changed. Until then, I had been a wife dealing with betrayal. Now I was an executive looking at a man willing to risk other families' rent, groceries, and health insurance to keep his own lies alive. I called the audit team. The payment was stopped before it cleared. We secured payroll. We protected benefits. We locked down records without warning Ethan. Then I disclosed my marriage to the board and stepped out of the investigation. They reviewed everything independently. 2 days later, Daniel called with an offer on the house. The board scheduled its vote for the morning of my divorce hearing. By the time Ethan saw me at the courthouse, I would not be asking for revenge. I would be carrying receipts. The courthouse smelled like floor polish, burnt coffee, and nerves. I arrived in a charcoal suit, carrying a folder, calm. My heels clicked across the marble. Ethan was already there. Linda stood beside him in emerald green. Jessica wore white, like she was attending a victory brunch. Ashley had one hand on her belly and the other looped through Ethan's arm. Around her neck sat the same diamond necklace from the payment records. Ethan looked me over and smirked. Decided to dress up for the occasion, I ignored him. My phone buzzed once. Daniel Sale recorded. Funds cleared. A second message followed. Board vote complete. Unanimous termination. For the first time that morning, My pulse slowed. Inside the courtroom, everything moved with dull, official precision. Papers slid across wood, chairs scraped. The judge reviewed our agreement. The house was listed as my separate property, exactly as the prenuptial agreement had stated from day one. Ethan kept whatever personal assets legally belonged to him. I asked for no support. The company dispute was not part of the divorce. I would not use family court to settle a corporate wrong. Ethan heard only one thing. I was not asking him for money. He leaned back, squeezed Ashley's hand, and smiled like he had won the Super Bowl. The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Parker, do you understand that this ends the marriage?" I looked at Ethan. 7 years flashed through my mind. The chipped mug, the late dinners, the fertility appointments he kept postponing. Every time I had made myself smaller so he could feel bigger. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I understand." The gavel came down. No fireworks, no music, just one clean sound. And the life I had fought to save was over. I expected to feel shattered. Instead, I felt like I had set down a suitcase I had carried for miles. I gathered my folder and walked toward the door. That was when Linda stepped in front of me. Not near the door, in it. She planted one palm against the frame and looked me up and down while Ethan, Ashley, and Jessica gathered behind her. A few attorneys were still nearby. Linda raised her voice. "Don't ever set foot in my house again," she snapped. "Get out!" For half a second, I was back in the rain, my clothes in black bags, my office torn open, my wedding picture bleeding ink across the driveway. Then the feeling passed. This time, I knew the truth. I looked at Linda, then at Ethan, and I smiled. "Actually," I said, letting the word hang there, "I already sold this house." Ethan laughed. It came out sharp and fake. "You can't sell my house." "Your house," I asked. His smile tightened. I opened my folder and held up the recorded transfer. "You signed the prenuptial agreement. Your lawyer explained it. The house was mine before the marriage, and it stayed mine. Paying the power bill did not make you the owner." Linda's face changed first, not fear, confusion. "The sale closed this morning for about $1.6 million, I said. "You'll receive proper notice and enough time to remove your belongings. Nobody is touching your personal property." Ethan stared at the paper. "You did this behind my back." "No, I handled my property without asking permission from the man who threw me out of it." Ashley's grip loosened around his arm. Jessica went pale. Linda opened her mouth. "But I was not done. And I just fired your son as CEO." Nobody laughed. A corporate attorney stepped out of the hallway and handed Ethan an envelope. He tore it open. His eyes raced down the page. "No," he said, "this is wrong." "It was a unanimous board vote," I said. The audit confirmed nearly $1 million in improper spending, personal jewelry, family housing, payments tied to Jessica's studio, and $50,000 you tried to pull from the employee reserve. Jessica turned toward him. "You said that money was yours." Ethan did not answer. "You were not fired because you cheated," I said. "You were fired because you treated employee money like your wallet." His phone began buzzing. Access revoked. Corporate cards suspended. System login disabled. He looked up, finally scared. "How could you do this to me?" I met his eyes. "I didn't take your life from you, Ethan. I stopped using mine to protect the lies you built. Then I stepped around Linda and walked out. For once. None of them told me where I belonged. The first thing Ethan did was call the board. The second thing he did was call me. I answered neither. By that afternoon, the company had named an interim CEO. Payroll went out on time. Health insurance stayed active. Client accounts were locked down before panic could spread. That mattered more to me than watching Ethan lose his office. He spent years acting like the company was a throne built for him. In reality, it was hundreds of people showing up every morning, packing lunches, dropping kids at school, and trusting their paychecks would clear on Friday. I was not going to punish them for his choices. The company demanded repayment of the money tied to personal spending. The records went to attorneys and the proper authorities for review. I did not know whether Ethan would face charges, and I never pretended I could control that. For once, I let the process move without stepping in to rescue him. Ashley found out how much of her life had been paid for with corporate cards when every one of them stopped working. Within days, she moved out of the temporary rental Ethan had secured. She did not disappear because she suddenly found a conscience. She left because the lifestyle was gone. I still made sure nothing we did interfered with her medical care or the baby's legal rights. That child had not betrayed me. Adults had. Jessica received a formal demand to explain the money that had gone into her wellness studio. About $250,000 had paid for equipment, rent, and a launch party she loved posting online. She called me screaming. "You're destroying my business." "No," I said. "I'm asking you to prove it was ever yours." Some of the equipment was placed under a legal claim while the payments were reviewed, without Ethan covering the bills. The studio lasted less than a month. Marcus moved into a small apartment with their daughter while family court reviewed custody. I did not promise him a perfect ending. I only promised that no one in my company would punish him for telling the truth. Linda fought the move-out notice until her own lawyer explained the house had never belonged to Ethan. She had enough time to pack every dress, every framed photo, and every piece of furniture she claimed I had stolen. The corporate apartment she had been using was handled separately. Once the legal process finished, she moved into a smaller place across town. Her country club friends stopped returning calls. That part did not surprise me. People who gather around status usually scatter when it disappears. A week after the hearing, I sat in my car outside the old house while the new owners changed the locks. The rain had stopped. Morning light touched the windows of my former office. I opened my clutch and took out the wedding photo. The paper had dried crooked. Ethan's face was still blurred. I tore it in half. Not out of rage, out of clarity. Then I drove to my new apartment and placed an empty frame on the shelf. For the first time in years, the blank space did not scare me. It looked like room for something honest. Months later, after the internal review ended, I offered Marcus a senior auditing role. He read the contract twice, then asked if I was sure. "I'm not rewarding you for choosing sides." I told him, "I'm hiring you because you protected people who never knew they were in danger." He nodded. And for once, he did not look down again. I used to think love meant staying quiet, carrying more, and making myself smaller so someone else could feel important. I was wrong. A house is not a family just because one voice is loudest inside it. Real family protects your dignity, tells the truth, and never asks you to disappear. I did not win because I had more money than Ethan. I won because I stopped saving him from himself. If you have ever had to set a boundary with your own family, share your story below and hit subscribe, because you are not alone here.